I never thought I'd be the one telling this story. Not after everything we went through, but as the years pass, I realize that the only way I can keep my sanity is by writing it down, putting the horrors of that weekend into words. Maybe it'll make sense to someone. Maybe it won't. But the truth is, we didn't just survive Black Pine Forest. We barely escaped with our lives. The trip started out simple enough. Marcus, Sarah, and I had decided to go on a hunting trip. A weekend getaway, away from the distractions of the world. A remote cabin near Black Pine Forest in Montana seemed like the perfect spot. The kind of place where you could be alone, surrounded by nothing but the wilderness. No phones, no people. Just us and nature. How can anything go wrong, right? The drive up there was beautiful, even with the hint of a storm building on the horizon. Marcus, always the optimist, joked about it. A little snow never hurt anyone. But I wasn't so sure. The further we drove, the more the weather seemed to close in on us. The wind howled through the trees, and the sky darkened, even though it was still midday. But we pressed on, excited for the time away from everything. The cabin was quaint, rustic, isolated, and exactly what we were looking for. It was old but sturdy. It had the smell of pine and wood smoke, a smell that should have been comforting. But the longer we stayed, the more I began to notice something strange about the place. It felt off somehow, like the air itself was thick with some unspoken tension. But I brushed it off as just my imagination, and we got to work unloading our gear, preparing for the hunt the next morning. That evening, the snowstorm finally hit, fast and fierce. By the time we had finished dinner and sat around the fireplace, the storm had trapped us inside. It wasn't the first time I'd been stuck somewhere during a storm, but this was different. The wind screamed outside, rattling the windows, and the cabin creaked in response. We all tried to make the best of it, playing cards and telling stories to pass the time. But as the hours dragged on, a strange unease began to settle over us. It started slowly at first, a soft tapping sound from outside. I thought it was just the wind, but then it came again, persistent, rhythmic, like someone knocking on the door. I stood up, the hairs on the back of my neck prickling with the sudden sense of being watched. "Did you hear that?" I asked, looking around the room. Sarah was sitting by the fire, her face illuminated by the flickering flames, her expression uneasy. Marcus glanced toward the door. "Probably just the storm. It's probably just tree branches banging against the cabin." But then we heard the voice. It was faint at first, barely a whisper, but it was unmistakable. "Help! Please, help me!" I froze. My heart raced. It was a voice, someone calling for help. The kind of voice that would cut through anyone's defenses. The kind of voice that made you want to act. But something about it felt wrong. There was an unnatural quality to it. Something I couldn't quite place. "Don't open the door," Sarah said, her voice trembling. Ben, however, didn't hesitate. "We can't just leave someone out there," he said, his voice already determined. Before either of us could say anything, Ben had already stood up and grabbed the door handle. "We can't just ignore this. If someone's out there, they need help." "Ben, wait," I said, my voice tight, but it was too late. He opened the door. The cold hit us like a wall of ice, and there, standing in the snow, was a figure, shivering, its back turned to us. It looked human, a man from the shape of his body, but his movements were strange, jerky. His clothes were torn, barely clinging to his skin. There was something unsettling about the way he swayed, like he was struggling to stay on his feet. "Help me!" The voice begged again, growing louder and more desperate. I could feel Sarah's breath catch in her throat, and I saw her move closer to the window, peering through the glass. "Ben, no!" she whispered. But Ben, stubborn as always, took a step toward the figure. And then it happened, in a flash of movement too quick to process. The figure turned, its face distorted in a grotesque mockery of a human expression. A wide grin split its face, revealing teeth that were too sharp, too many. Its eyes were dark, hollow pits, and it reached out with long, clawed fingers, grabbing Ben's arm. "Ben!" I screamed. He struggled, but the thing was too strong. It dragged him backward into the snow, his screams echoing through the night, the sound of flesh tearing as it pulled him into the forest. I felt a sickening chill spread through me, a coldness that went beyond the storm outside. I ran to the door, but Marcus grabbed my arm, his face pale. "Don't. We can't help him now." The door slammed shut, and we bolted it as quickly as we could. I turned to Sarah, my heart hammering in my chest. She was already on the radio, trying to call for help, but the storm was too intense. The signal crackled and died after only a few seconds. "We have to get out of here," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "We have to leave." But we couldn't leave. We were trapped. The growling started then. At first, I thought it was just a wind, but as it grew louder, I realized it was something else. Something that wasn't human. Something wrong. We heard it above us. Scraping, scratching sounds, like claws on wood. The roof groaned under the weight of something large. The growling shifted, as though it was circling the cabin. Marcus quickly grabbed a chair and jammed it under the door handle, securing it. The windows were boarded up, but I could still hear it. Those horrible sounds. The scraping, the growling, the whispers calling us into the dark. We stayed like that all night, huddled in the dim light of the dying fire, too terrified to sleep, too terrified to move. And when dawn finally broke, the storm had stopped, leaving behind an eerie silence. A search party arrived by morning, led by some of the locals. They found us, Marcus and Sarah, cold and shaken, but alive. But Ben, he was gone, not a trace. No blood, no signs of a struggle. It was as if he had never existed. As we made our way back to the town, the locals didn't speak much, but I overheard them talking about the Wendigo. They said it was a thing that lived in the forest. It mimics voices. It lures people into the woods, feeding on their fear, their flesh. We never went back to Black Pine Forest, and I don't think I ever will. Whatever was out there, I don't think we were meant to survive it. Ben didn't, and the rest of us are left with nothing but the memories. The sounds, the growling, and the voice that called us into the night. The hunger in Black Pine Forest is still there, waiting, and I can't shake the feeling that it's still watching us, waiting for the next soul to wander too close. I had heard rumors about the Appalachian Mountains, the sort of whispers that circled through small towns and campfires, the kind of stories that felt more myth than fact. But there we were, Jake, Emily, and our dog Scout, driving through the dense forest toward an old, secluded hunting cabin for a weekend getaway. We wanted to disconnect from the world, get some space away from the chaos of daily life. No self-service, no distractions, just us and nature. The cabin was exactly as promised, isolated and rustic, nestled deep in the woods. It seemed untouched by time, its wood weathered and gray. The air was thick with the scent of pine and earth, and the sky above was an endless stretch of blue, with the peaks of the Appalachian Mountains standing like silent giants in the distance. We could hear the wind rustling through the trees and the occasional snap of a branch underfoot, but other than that, it was still. Perfect, Jake said, helping me unload the car. Scout, our black lab, bounded through the woods, sniffing everything in sight, his tail wagging furiously. We had planned for this to be a peaceful retreat, a chance to reconnect without the constant hum of the world intruding. That first night, we sat by the fire, roasting marshmallows and talking about everything and nothing. But Scout was acting strange. Every so often, he would stop whatever he was doing, his ears perked, eyes wide and scanning the tree line. It was odd, but we shrugged it off, assuming it was just wildlife. The Appalachian woods were full of creatures. After all, we kept the fire burning brightly, its crackling the only sound that broke the silence. But then Scout began barking, low at first, then louder, more frantic. His barks echoed through the woods, and his eyes were fixed on something unseen. I shivered and glanced at Jake. "Probably just a deer or a raccoon," he said, trying to reassure me. But Scout wasn't calming down. He paced back and forth, growling under his breath, ears pinned back. Finally, without warning, he bolted, disappearing into the dark expanse of forest with a yelp. "Scout!" I cried, jumping up to follow him, but Jake grabbed my arm. "Stay here," he said. "I'll go get him." I hesitated, but nodded. My heart raced as I watched Jake disappear into the trees, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. Moments later, I heard a distant yelp, followed by a horrible, shrill whine. It was Scout. I felt a lump rise in my throat as I heard him cry out again, a sound unlike anything I had ever heard from him. Something wasn't right. "Jake!" I screamed, but there was no answer. I grabbed my jacket and ran toward the door, but I stopped dead when I heard it. Whispers. Soft, insistent voices carried by the wind. They were barely audible, just on the edge of hearing. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but the hairs on my neck stood up as the whispers grew louder. They were calling to me, though I couldn't understand the words. Suddenly, Jake's voice broke through the silence, calling my name from deeper in the woods. His tone was different, faint, almost muffled, like he was struggling to speak. I rushed outside, flashlight in hand. My pulse was racing as I cut through the woods, following Jake's voice, trying to locate him. The trees seemed to close in around me as I ventured further from the cabin, the cold air biting at my skin. Then I saw it. An open clearing, the moonlight illuminating something on the ground. Animal bones, dozens of them, arranged in strange, unnatural patterns. My stomach churned as I scanned the scene. It didn't look like a hunting trap or anything I could explain. There was a disturbing symmetry to the way the bones were placed, as if something had deliberately arranged them. I took a step closer, and then I heard it. The chanting, a deep, guttural sound coming from all around me. I froze. The whispering had stopped, replaced by the chanting, an eerie rhythm that seemed to pulse in my chest. I turned slowly, and that's when I saw them. Figures moving through the mist, their shapes obscured by the shadows. Tall, gaunt, and twisted. They wore masks made of antlers, their eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. I felt my heart stop. One of the figures stepped forward, its movements jerky and unnatural. It opened its mouth, and the scream that emerged was like nothing I'd ever heard, a horrifying, bone-chilling blend of human agony and animal ferocity. It was a sound that seemed to tear at the very fabric of the night. Panic surged through me. I turned to run, but my legs were frozen, as if the ground itself had rooted me in place. The chant grew louder, the air thick with the scent of decay. The trees around me seemed to whisper, bending inward as though they were closing in on me. My flashlight flickered, casting fleeting, distorted shadows across the ground. Suddenly, I heard Scout's frantic barking again, much closer now. It was filled with terror. And then silence. I ran back to the cabin, my breath coming in ragged gasps, my mind racing. I could hear footsteps behind me, just out of reach, and something more, a low, deep growl. I slammed the door shut behind me and locked it, my hand shaking. Jake came stumbling back to the cabin, his face pale, his clothes torn. "Jake, what?" I began, but he cut me off. "We need to barricade the windows," he said urgently, moving toward the door. We pushed furniture against the walls, making sure the windows were secured. Outside, I could hear the wind howling, and something else, something far worse. A scraping noise against the cabin walls, as if something was trying to get in. The sound of claws, nails scraping relentlessly. It didn't stop. Hours passed, or maybe it was only minutes, but time seemed to stretch and bend. Then, in the silence, I heard it, Scout, his frantic scratching at the door. I rushed to open it, but Jake grabbed my arm. "Don't," he shouted. "It's not him." I froze, my heart pounding. His eyes were wide with fear, and I saw the truth in them. Whatever was out there, it wasn't our dog. And then, with a horrible sound, Scout's scratching stopped. The door creaked, slowly, creaked open on its own, and in the dim light, I saw him, Scout. But his fur was matted with blood, his eyes wild and unrecognizable, his body trembling. He was not the dog we knew. He whimpered in pain, barely able to stand, before collapsing at our feet. And then it came. A voice, cold and ancient, whispered from the darkness outside. "You're next." We didn't sleep that night. We didn't speak. The next morning, we were going to leave. Whatever it took, we were getting out. But as I stepped outside, I froze. There, in the underbrush, half buried in the dirt, was a body. A man, his face twisted in terror, his chest torn open. It was fresh. His blood still soaked the ground around him. "Jake," I whispered, but he was already pulling me away. We needed to run. We didn't know where we were running to, but we had to get out of those woods. And that's when they came.